Hi, this is the Meme Team podcast where we talk about the logic behind virality, because marketing isn't just logic, it's culture, and our podcast decodes both. Welcome, everybody. We have a guest with us today, Vincenzo Landino. You might know him as the F1 guy on Twitter. That's how I know him. So we'll be getting into that a little bit later.
Thanks. Happy to be here. And funny thing about the F1 guy, if I call you on the phone, it'll show up on your phone as the F1 guy. I don't know how. I don't know why. Anyway, it's pretty cool.
Amazing. Are going to want to know how you can do this to your phone.
I love it. You're a guy.
Even if I call a landline that has caller ID, if anyone knows what that is anymore.
Yeah, right.
It shows up that way. So it's like, yeah, that's very weird.
That's amazing. I want to show up as the marketing guy.
I know, right?
Right?
That's amazing branding for you.
Yeah, it is.
I'm not mad about it.
That's great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, let's start with the banter of the week. Basically, as a follow-up to our conversation earlier this week, I saw on Twitter that someone posted about how they got an email for an audition to go be in Andrew Cuomo's latest video for a gentrifier, a young white man.
Oh my gosh. So the person who received this email was a young white man and received the open call for, hey, we're looking for gentrifiers. You look like one.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, exactly.
I guess it's not surprising that they would have essentially casting calls for this kind of thing, but I kind of hope that it was at least people on the street and that they would ask throughout, like, hey, you here, could you be in this video? But it makes sense that they would plant it better.
No, it doesn't make sense. You know why? Because Andrew Cuomo has a list of people that have donated to his campaign and that are interested in him and his policies. So why wouldn't you just send the email to those folks instead of it having to be more of an open call? At least keep it a little bit more private. Though honestly, a lot of these things don't stay private.
No, I was gonna say it looked like an audition notice that you would get from any like production company.
Right.
So,
it does, yeah.
Yeah, so that's what it's just like. Maybe they're looking for actors who might be able to portray a little bit more authenticity than like
authentically gentrified.
Yeah,
you know, it's funny you say that, right? Because either of you watch Entourage?
I watched a few episodes.
All right, so it's neither here nor there about the show and the content of the show. It's more about there's a scene in the show where the director tells the main character that he can't play somebody from Queens, and he's like, why can't I play somebody from Queens? I literally grew up on the streets of Queens. We grew up here. We lived here, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, well, you don't look like you grew up there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like from a casting perspective, it's funny because it's like, you know, depending on who sent it, because I think it
was a production company that sent it. So
it was a production company. Yeah,
you might be able to say Andrew Cuomo's campaign might be able to say like, hey, it wasn't us, it was like production company. But then the question remains, well, that's because you couldn't bring in your own people, right? Like, and it's just such a stark difference from the Mamdani's like on the street campaign where people were, you know, going up to him. And we had talked about that where it's like, I would have thought it'd be like a handler going up to people. So this is just another level of like how complicated it was to get people to support him.
Or if nothing else, though, it shows how far removed Cuomo and his team are from the video production. You know, because it could even just be that they didn't try to source. And it could be that the production company was like, we're just sourcing talent. We got to go. Because I can understand an agency being in that mode of like, we're hired to make the videos, so we got to get talent. We got to get this thing. And it just becomes another thing on the checklist. It could even just be that that's how far removed they are or like working in silos. That the production team sees it as like, oh, this is a job to be done.
It's a job to be done.
Fair.
Yeah. Doesn't bode well, though. You know, no. Not saying it's good.
Yeah, definitely.
Optics are probably worse than it actually is, I bet. Right?
Yeah, I can see that.
And like the intention might have been. I mean, I had a production company for a long time, and so whenever you're casting or looking for, this is a part of the job. Like this is my checklist. Right. As a producer, like I need this, that, and the other thing, and I'm doing this no matter what. I'm not giving anyone a pass on not checking, but it's almost like, I don't know. It feels like you can turn anything into a story these days. kind of my point.
Definitely on Twitter.
Yeah.
And that's what happened, right? So, but the other thing is like people were open to this narrative, right? Because of, how the video kind of landed. And I saw afterwards that Mamdani had replied to the tweet, and his tweet got more likes and like responses than Cuomo's original.
We call
So
that a
there's definitely
ratio.
something, right? Exactly. So, but yeah, let's move on to our first topic.
Yeah, our first topic is AI slop. Let's talk about the slop, guys. So recently, YouTube updated its YouTube Partner Program monetization policies with more detailed guidelines on the types of videos that are eligible to make money and what cannot. So essentially, YouTube is trying to better identify when content is mass produced or repetitive. Like I think we've all at this point stumbled upon those like photo videos with the AI generated voice. There are even a bunch of like AI generated fake news videos about the Diddy trial that those went viral. So this is clearly an issue, right? And so YouTube has to step up and figure out like how can we disincentivize people from creating more of this slop. So one way is to make it ineligible to make ad revenue. And I will say, I hope we'll see more of some kind of pushback, right, from the platforms on this AI slop. But then meanwhile, we have some AI slop going viral. There was that Wimbledon influencer, but it was an AI generated influencer with apparently 2 knee joints in her leg, hanging out at Wimbledon, watching the game. Obviously it's fake, obviously it's AI generated, but I think that that post, I think that Wimbledon post now has like almost 300,000 likes. This particular influencer, that Mia Zelu or Mia Zelu, has like almost 300,000 followers, which, what, for me, that calls into question why. Like, why does this exist? Why does anyone follow this? But then that quickly has me thinking, does anyone follow this? Like, at this point, social media bots have become so sophisticated, right? So hard to find that I wonder if the vast majority of this account's followers are just bots. And so if it goes viral, if we just think it went viral, that's kind of what I wonder. But perhaps that's neither here nor there, because these AI generated influencers like Mia Zelu is not the only one, right? There are lots of these. And
Did
I
we
guess
find out who made that?
No, I don't think we know. Do we know? I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because that would have been like my question.
Yeah.
It's like, what's the point? So you have an influencer that you created specifically to be at Wimbledon, like
Yeah.
for what? To become like a tennis influencer, like to just show off that, you can create this type of art. I mean, it's not art, like quote unquote art, but like
Yeah,
you can create these
It's
types
slop.
of this content for people. Like
Yeah.
So I'd be curious to see what
No,
it's
still
for.
anonymous still.
Huh.
Don't know when the account was created, but it's funny. I was trying to research this before we hopped on the pod here, and I was reading through news articles about Mia Zelu to figure out like, well, why is this going viral? Like, what is interesting about this? And none of those articles even answer that. That's why I wonder, like,
Yeah.
are these followers even real?
Yeah, but I guess the flip side of that is, where's the curiosity from like the journalists or the content creators that are asking these questions or should be asking these questions? Like, why aren't we talking about, who created this and like the purpose of it,
Yeah.
especially for things that go viral and that, reach mainstream. I think part of what is on us, or, I mean, I don't know. Who is it on, I guess, is the other question, right? To let people know that this content creator was fake and like what it's supposed to do for our, knowledge or understanding, of like regular folks, because this also reminds me of that. The photo that went viral of the AI chatbots on Facebook, where there was like 1 million plus people talking to a chicken, like where they didn't realize that, or maybe they did. I don't know. The question was, the question the person was asking was, who is talking to a chicken, And at the time, these were like open conversations, like people could see on their timeline that people, people they knew were talking to the chicken. Facebook went and then turned it off, because it's like, yeah, maybe people don't want want other people to know that they're talking to a chicken chatbot. That's obviously fake, right? Because chickens cannot talk, right? So yeah, it's kind of weird that like, we're at this point, but then it's also like we're at a new frontier of like, new content that's been created, new chatbots. So people don't really know how to act or like what to do. We all make kind of the jokes of like boomers not knowing that who they're talking to is real on phone calls. How is that going to change when they're talking to chatbots on Facebook that they think are like real accounts?
We are all these boomers now, like like it is kind of sad that people aren't asking the question of why does this account exist, who's behind it, what's the point. It looks like it was started maybe about 4 months ago or so. So could have been started.
So it wasn't even specifically for Wimbledon,
or it could have been.
Yeah, it could have been.
Started it just enough in advance. I mean, build up a little bit of.
Yeah,
I don't know. I think you're onto something with why aren't we asking questions, but maybe that's because we sit in a bubble, but not a bubble, but like we sit in a circle, right? You sit.
Yeah.
It's your circle of influence, and
right.
And so maybe as marketers, we think like, people should be asking questions and this is outrageous. And because it feels like it might be coming for what we do or what we've done in the past, work wise or with our expertise and leveraging that. And now somebody could just fire up a bot and get a bunch of attention. I mean, we know how hard it is to generate any amount of attention. Amanda, I haven't seen recently like how your posts do on X, but like, at one point you were getting tons of traction. Maybe you still are. So but it changes, right? Right. So it goes up and down. I'm only going based off of mine. I'm using Amanda because everyone knows you and not me on the show.
But, you're the F1 guy. What are you talking about? The F1 community knows you.
But attention has changed, right? Yeah. Attention has changed, and how we get attention has significantly changed. Yes, new frontier, but really it's just old tools, new application of or old fundamentals, new applications of it. I'm not saying like, okay, what does an AI influencer do for me? Okay, but she's a young, white, blonde. I mean, like it fits all of the demographic things that you're looking for, or maybe what the brand might be looking for. I mean, who knows? This could have been Wimbledon for all we know.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, we just need someone that looks pretty and we can promote and we don't need to blur out faces. Everyone in the thing is fake, so it doesn't really matter. We can promote our drink. We can promote our, it's attention. At the end of the day, I think it's attention. How do you get the attention? If that account generates attention and now suddenly Zulu, what's her name? Lulu, whatever her name is.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
The influencer, the fake influencer.
It's an A-bot. She doesn't care.
Exactly. Suddenly she's promoting, San Pellegrino. Oh. Wow, she's got 500. It's still a follower game at the end of the day. Followers, I know you both understand that. Like followers, as much as we know followers, like, they matter, but not really. You could talk 1,000 true fans all you want to people, and they're like, yeah, but do you have 1 million followers? But do you have like, are you really reaching this? I mean, and I think maybe Amanda, you said it right from the outset. Are they even real interactions? Do the brands care? So if you're looking at it from a pure money grab perspective, it's like, hey, I have a personality with a lot of followers, and look at all the engagement. We don't know where engagement's coming from half the time anymore. Anywhere, even with real people. Like I'm a real person, and half of the people that interact, I don't know if I have no idea if they're real. And so I think there's just a lot of questions, but also like there's a lot of things that get slipped under the rug because do people even care anymore? Look at what Elon just launched yesterday. Was the AI companion on Grok?
Oh right,
did you guys see that?
Yeah.
And I saw some comments. People were like, "Oh, this is gamer culture. Like gamer culture is really, penetrating kind of that main like cultural zeitgeist right now." And so, is that why the AI stuff doesn't bother people? We're so used to seeing gaming and now we have gaming franchises turning into hit TV shows, Last of Us, Fallout, things like. So are people kind of blending all of this? And does it even, at that point you're like, well, it all is one thing anyway, so it doesn't really matter anymore.
I do wonder if it's kind of at this point where like because when I say like, like, who cares? Why does this matter? I wonder if people are like, well, maybe none of it's real anyway. Like, like in the sense, right? Like, you could tell someone who, let's say someone is really into this AI influencer, and you can tell them it's not even real. Why do you care? Right? That person could say, well, even if I followed a celebrity online, that
Is
isn't
that real?
real. Like, it's not a real relationship anyway.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
this one actually replies to me. Doesn't matter that it's not real. It's all digital. And so in a sense, all these digital things are not real.
Well,
So,
you hear it
yeah.
all the time from people that set up Twitter accounts and they start getting, or X account, whatever, and they start getting replies and like, bro, why are you on my timeline? Well, you put something out there publicly. You didn't expect, and like people actually think when they're posting things that nobody's going to see it or nobody's going to react to it until they do. So you're right. It's like, it's not even real to them. They don't, it's not like tangible anyway. For a lot of people, going to Wimbledon is never going to be a realistic thing, or going to an F1 race is never going to be. So what do I care if it's an AI influencer or not? Like, I'm never going there anyway. So the people that go there, to me, or me, the viewer, for all I know and care, they could be fake too.
Honestly,
So
now you're making me think, so the opposite of that, right? Like, as a regular person, that would go to one of these events, it could also be like a privacy screen, right? Where it's like, that you're probably not going to show up in any of the photos because what they're showing are all the AI influencers that are there. So it provides another level of privacy. This reminds me of how, for the masters, right? You're not allowed to take your phone with you so that you don't take photos. And I wonder if like more events are going to be able to do that, to kind of allow for that level of like, you're here for the event and the experience, you're going to experience it as just like the event and not have like your phone distracting you. And then it might also provide another level of like privacy for celebrities, right? Who like want to attend, some of these events and, don't, are often seen as the face, right? Like the photos that I saw were like all the famous people, and then like future king and queen of England and their children, having their photos taken at Wimbledon. And I wonder, like, if for them it's more appealing to be like, okay, maybe these AI influencers are going to just take enough attention from us that people won't be like looking at us. Probably not them, because everyone's always going to be interested in the monarchy or whatever. But some of the celebrities that like go, like maybe that'll be appealing as a
maybe
way to go forward.
Or maybe we'll see the masters come out with their own AI generated influencer. Like, you can't bring your phone because we got it.
Yeah,
we already got it.
We're going to create the content anyway.
Yeah,
exactly. Anonymity, though, I think is the gamer culture, and anonymity, I think is we're going to see more. We're probably going to see more of this because of that. Look at the majority of, and I say majority, but I probably shouldn't. I don't have a number. But look at a lot of the people that you might interact with online. Unless you personally know them, a lot of these folks have fake profile photos. They're not using their real name. They give very little information about themselves, but they are real people interacting.
Right.
You can tell by the way they're speaking, going back and forth with you, but they don't want you to know their identity. So an AI influencer or an AI account could be a perfect opportunity for a lot of folks to be the influencer they really want to be, but still have like this safe
that's
approach.
what I was going to say. That's one thing. It reminds me of the book and the movie Ready Player One, where you kind of have the avatars of like who you are online versus who you are as a real person or whatever, and those often aren't the same. But generally, you're only allowed like the one profile, right? You don't have like multiple profiles, at least in that story. So I do wonder if that's like a thing where it's like, is there going to be one where it's like you're only tied to one, one avatar, one, character, or are we going to have like multiple ones the way that it is now? And then I did want to bring up that, we talk about, people not caring, but YouTube does care in terms of like, what they're paying out, right? Because that's why they're creating these new rules. So I'll be curious to see what other, companies, especially, social media companies, Instagram, Facebook, institute similar rules in order to kind of limit how much payout they're giving, and I think that we might see something there in the future where real people, influencers, creators might be on the one side of like, yeah, why we shouldn't pay out, to these AI influencers because they're not real. Whereas you have these, the people that are creating these like AI influencers who do want that money, right? Because it's like, well, we are putting in the work and we're, doing everything to kind of create, the following and grow the profiles and, all that stuff. Why shouldn't
Sure. Yeah.
that be considered work that also gets payouts?
Yeah,
that's
people
true.
they don't like to equate AI in general with art. I mean, there are people that are vehemently
Right.
against anything AI. Like, don't even send me a joke if it's created by AI, whatever. But how much of this is really different than art? You look at the banana that got sold, whatever,
Yeah,
the
sure.
banana taped to the wall that got sold for 18 million or whatever it was. I mean, how is that any different than some of the stuff we're talking about when it comes to AI? It's digital, right? Is it because the banana's tangible, or the Banksy painting, or that got shredded? How much of this is similar, and how much of this is, like I said, same concepts, just new tools? That's all we're like. That's to me, that's what it is.
Yeah.
And I think on that note, some good lessons here for marketers. That was exactly what I wanted to hit on about AI being a tool. Like, I think the key thing for marketers is to remember, yeah, sure, like old principles, old standards, but like new tools, right? Like if you're going to use AI, and this goes for anybody, right? Think about how to use it responsibly. Think about how to use it as a tool in your workflow, not as the means to create net new stuff, because it won't be net new. And I think as consumers, always be aware of what you're looking at, what you're filtering in. I think that should always be true regardless of AI.
Yeah.
But
No, that's
especially
true.
now in
For
this
sure.
era.
Yeah.
For sure.
This is the new world. You are gonna have to use AI to some extent, right? I like to think of it as like you're expanding your own abilities and growing like the things that you're already like good at, and maybe helping supplement the things that you aren't good at, right? But one thing I would be aware of is how your brand kind of fits into the AI narrative, right? I mean, we've talked about the example of Duolingo going AI first and the backlash that they faced from their users who weren't happy about it, and at the time we were saying that they could have approached it in a different way, but in the future we may see that people call them pioneers for coming out as one of the first companies to do that, but that's just something that you have to think about as as a brand, whether you want to kind of dip your toe into that mess, right, of having that conversation and like being strong about it. And I think for companies where AI isn't part of your product or your service, like why bother, just like quietly do it, like figure out the ways that it'll work for you, and do it that way. But if it is something that AI is like a huge feature of what you do, then trying to hide it is not going to work for you, but trying to focus on it in a way that helps human ability is probably like the way to go right now. But those are all things that you should be doing as you kind of like social listen to like your audience and your demo to figure out where their stance is on AI. Because like Vincenzo said, some people are very adamant that they do not want anything to have to do with AI. You probably don't want to, be saying that you're, how you're using AI and like be all gung ho for those folks, right? But there are people that are more amenable to it and are already using it, are open to it. By finding if that's your core demographic, then like go all in on that and like, figure out how to, position your company and your product and your messaging expanding from there.
All right. So we brought on our friend Vincenzo to be on the pod, but also to talk about F1, because we have playfully,
We've been talking
but also
about it.
but also like truthfully said, we know you as the F1 guy, but also you've been a fan of F1 for a long time, like before it really got mainstream.
Long before that, yeah. So early 90s. It's very different from where it was to where it is now, especially in the United States. I'll say that. There was a time when, and I'll get into the point in a second, but there was a time when you couldn't talk to anybody that knew anything about Formula One. Especially because at that point it was like, oh, it's that race series in Europe. That was the even though there were races here in the US, and no one cared. It was not easy to get. If it wasn't from being in an immigrant household and having uncles that loved motorsport, I probably also would have never watched it. It just wasn't common. So now, like, seeing to where we are, fast forward 30 plus years later, and seeing it in this completely new light, like, for me, it's exciting. There's purists that are almost angry. You'll see a lot of online chatter, purists that are just like, they're Americanizing this. It's all glitz and glamour now. And it's like, it always was glitz and glamour. Let's be real. It was never NASCAR. If you look at a lot of the old, I'm talking, go back to the 70s, go back to the 60s, grid girls and the drivers sitting on their cars smoking a cigarette. I mean, those are ads now. Now those are cool ads. Some brand, lifestyle brand, is using that as like their cool ad to sell, I don't know, some sweater. Like, that was Formula One back in the day. And so let's just, I guess, fast forward to what I want to talk about, which was, Apple is making a really hard push. If not, they've already made the push. I don't have any news on the final deal yet, but we're talking like $150 million a year to buy the rights, the broadcast rights. So if you're a new fan, you've probably been watching on ESPN. Unless you got a little bit more into it, you might have subscribed to F1's direct-to-consumer product, F1 TV. The big question here is, how and why does Apple want to buy it? For me, and the way I look at it is, Apple needs something culturally relevant. So I even wrote about it. And my position was that Liberty Media doesn't necessarily care so much. Liberty Media is the parent company that owns F1. They bought it in 2017, late 2016. It was like $8 billion deal. Wow. They bought it from the old curmudgeon Bernie Ecclestone that owned it for decades. And
wait,
Bernie,
they own F1 or just the licensing or like streaming rights?
They own. So Liberty Media actually owns Formula One. Formula One Media, the actual company itself. Yeah.
Okay.
Not so. F1's interesting. There's F1, the actual product itself, everything you see. Then there's the FIA, which is a governing body that governs how the sport races. But that's completely separate and has nothing to do with this conversation. It's just important to know that there is a governing body that governs over the regulation and rules, the sporting rules and regulations, and like the technical aspect. But the brand and the cool stuff that we want to talk about is all Formula One Media and Liberty Media, which is, I believe they are now technically the largest sports entertainment holding company in the world.
So the Apple deal is buying F1, or it's buying just like the streaming rights to it?
They are just buying the streaming rights. Sorry, yes. I thought you were asking about Liberty Media, Amanda.
No, I was asking about Liberty Media.
Yeah, sorry,
okay,
that was a different question.
So they're buying the streaming rights just for the United States. So currently, the way it's being held, ESPN has the broadcast rights, which is owned by Disney, ABC, all that stuff. They have streaming rights. And that's been since 2022. They had it before that as well. They renewed their rights in 2022. And their offer, or the current deal, is about $85 million a year, which at the time everyone thought was kind of low.
Okay.
Not kind of low. At the time, that was like 2022, things were really peaking, like going up with F1. And so 85 felt strange, but F1 and Liberty Media were not ready to pull away from ESPN at the time. It was kind of like, well, do we want to, like, we're in the middle of this growth, and do we want to get people, especially in the US, like, do we want to take away from them what they're comfortable or used to, or what it's accessible? ESPN is, traditionally ESPN is on your cable package, and a lot of people had cable, but now we're not in a world of cable anymore. We're in a world of fragmented streaming services. And so you fast forward from 2022 to 2025, and a lot has changed. You have the F1 movie, which also was announced in 2022, 21, late 21, early 22, they were talking about this F1 movie, and it was being, like Lewis Hamilton's going to produce it, and Brad Pitt's going to star, and all this stuff was being talked about. And now this year it actually came out. So it was very, very perfect strategic timing by Liberty Media to have this film come out, and then the U.S. broadcast rights expire at the end of the year, but negotiations were happening this year. And so this movie had to be a success. This movie had to be a hit, but not necessarily for the reason, the sole purpose of just jacking up the price, which it did. I think it's also to create this cultural opportunity, and it's a blockbuster. It's a hit. It's grossed 400 million, which people are like, well, 400 million. Listen, in the world of Avengers, everyone thinks a billion or bust.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
people are like, if it doesn't hit a billion, it's no good. And that's just not.
It wasn't in the top 3 box office of all time. How pathetic.
I mean, and that's the thing. The Avengers thing has really screwed a lot of people's heads, because if you look at even the top 10 paid actors of all time, there's only one in that top 10 list that's not from a Marvel franchise. Tom Cruise.
Yeah, who we love on this podcast. The last movie star.
Love Tom, exactly. So when you look at things like that, you're like, oh my goodness, 400 million is a pretty good number. And it's a very global reach. Outside of the US, you have China, France, the UK, Australia, that lead the way in going to see the movie and the box office numbers. So for F1, it's yep, this is who we are. For a company that wants to have a global presence and kind of tag on to a cultural juggernaut, Apple has the money to not worry about the numbers. To me, I always thought Netflix would have been the best play for this, just because having piggybacking off of Drive to Survive, they have a lot of F1 related content on their platform, but also because you need a live sports draw to keep people coming back to your platform, right? A lot of people now subscribe when they want to watch a show and unsubscribe when the show's over, and then come back and go back and forth. How do you keep people locked in? I mean, live sports, I think, is the only real opportunity for any of these streaming platforms. That's why a lot of them are buying live sports.
I mean, Netflix has tried, right? They are doing the MMA fights, or they have the boxing fights. But I mean, that's not
those are all
popular.
But they've also been doing live content in general, right? They did. Netflix did the Chris Rock special, right? They also have John Mulaney's weekly show. They had the roast of Tom Brady. That was all live. To your point, Vincenzo, just that's a really good point about sports, because I don't know. I mean, I guess I'd be very curious for Netflix how their live content is doing, because in my head, I don't need to watch John Mulaney's show when it goes live. If I care, I'll just tune in whenever I have time.
Yeah, sports is truly
different. You can't just, you can't tune into a fight, a match, whatever, weeks after it happens.
When I was a little kid, you could tape a game, and you could go weeks without ever really knowing what happened if you didn't want to. Now it's impossible, right? You get alerts to your phone, you're on X, you can't escape. Even with TV shows, these juggernaut TV shows, I don't want to hear what happened on The Last of Us. I can't. Well, you better watch it within a couple of days, because going further than that, it's almost impossible. So with sports, forget it. It's what is the point? You're going to see clips and highlights and all this. I mean, clips are instantly generated at this point.
Yeah.
So forget about waiting.
I mean, there's a lot of social teams that work very hard to do that, and they have to, right? Because if they're not owning that content, then other creators are owning that content. So I've seen a lot of sports teams and their marketing teams start really bulking up how quickly they're doing that turnaround, because they know that that's what people are looking out for on, on X, on, social media across the board, in order to share that, or have commentary on that. So if sports teams themselves aren't doing that, they're going to lose a lot of views to other creators that are creating that content faster than they are.
Yeah, there's so much opportunity with live sports content wise, right? We know that. And Apple, listen, I'll tell you this, Apple's got really high quality content. I don't know if you guys watch any of the shows on there or anything.
We do.
They do very little marketing.
Yeah, we've talked about that before. Whereas part of the problem is people aren't finding out about the shows that are on there unless they're, you know, putting money behind it, right? We started seeing them put money behind the Severance. Slow Horses has been like a slow, you know, moving, you know, train that like people are finally getting on board. But that's been more like word of mouth. I feel like they rely a lot more on word of mouth. Part of it, I think, is just the way that Apple has just itself as a company marketed itself and its products. It's been like, you know, one big push. You know, they do their annual meeting where they're, you know, announcing the products that are coming out for the year. And then, you know, they'll have some things that they put, you know, out there as like marketing. You know, we have like the billboards and stuff. And I mean, for me, the ones that I remember most are like the PC and like Mac, right? And then you had the original like Steve Jobs, you know, 1984 commercial, right? But since then, and then the iPod, like, you know, ads that they used to do back in the day with like the singing and the dancing and stuff. But those aren't really things that they like do anymore. So that's been like one of my big quibbles, because like, you know, honestly, a while ago, the Apple TV became my main platform, like where I would like default go to find shows, because they create such high quality ones. And then I also think that they're really bulking up their sci-fi and like fantasy series. And then also Apple has MLS, right?
Yeah, so I was gonna.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
I can briefly touch on it. I mean, the MLS thing was interesting because when that dropped, it was, you know, $2.5 billion over 10 years. I thought it was kind of a bad move at that point. MLS has kind of disappeared since that Apple thing happened. And again, for Apple, doesn't really matter. The $2.5 billion is nothing for them to spend on it. They get to have this sport. I think it was the wrong sport for them to go after, but it was an experiment that was for them, they could take, right? It's a gamble. They're like, it's $2.5 billion, whatever. Let's just do it. Well, here's what I think it really did. It allowed them to hone, and then they had the MLB one as well. They do like Major League Baseball. They spent quite a bit of money. I think it was like 85 million or so just for Major League Baseball. Like, I think it was just Friday nights or whatever the deal was. And I think that's expanded, but what it allowed them to do was to create original broadcasts, to create a game day experience, graphics, overlays. Those productions are not easy by any stretch. They've done a pretty good job. I watched some of the MLS stuff. I did not subscribe to the package, and I refuse to. I'm not an MLS fan. I watch Italian soccer, and I have subscriptions for that. But
that's why it was surprising.
I mean, the quality is excellent.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not paying whatever it is for MLS. Like, it's just not.
You're like, it looks great, not for me.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Clearly, a lot
as
of
a
work
product, it looks great.
Yeah.
Totally, yeah.
I'm not an MLS fan, so.
Yeah.
Now, Formula One, the same thing could happen. It could just disappear into oblivion, because are people now going to pay? See, here's the thing with ESPN. You can get the Hulu, ESPN, Disney trio for like $11 or whatever it is a month. I don't know what this is going to cost. If I'm going to judge it based off of F1 TV, you've got a couple packages here in the US, the top tier being $130 for the year, which is what I have. Like, that's my tier I sign up to. It's 4K. I got all the things. So if I'm guessing Apple sells this for even $99.99 a year, you have to now spend $100 to use Apple TV for the year, to watch a sport that you were catching casually a couple races a year, if they were on ESPN or if they were on ABC, if you got lucky, right? There's a couple on ABC. Well, those were free. Now you're telling people they got to spend $100 minimum. I don't know if I see that, but from Apple's side of the coin, they're like, again, not a big deal. We've got the money for this. And all we want is for it to be a technology exhibit for us and to promote our other stuff. Because there's no better way to promote your other programming, than live sports. It's like something that people are sitting here watching constantly. You're not taking your eyes off of a sporting event, but you'll walk away or pause a show or, okay, one episode's over, I'll come back to the next one, whatever. You're keeping people engaged. So anyway, from an engagement perspective and attention perspective, I think a sport like Formula One is great for them. The technology integration, the things they can do. So what led me to believe that they might have more of a technology play is they released that haptic feedback trailer.
The haptic trailer for that
which
point
was
of
really
view.
cool, right? It vibrated with the
Yeah.
movement. And so I'm like, okay, this is really, really interesting. If they integrate more technology into the broadcast, things you can only do exclusively on Apple, it's such a great play. It makes so much sense for Apple. For F1, now for F1, the brand, I don't know if I love it. You know, you're gating off the brand a lot, especially in this, you know, you're still trying to grow. You're still trying to be a little bit more inclusive of different groups. Does this do that? I don't know. For Liberty Media, third party in this whole situation, it's great.
Yeah.
They don't have to,
Yeah.
because at this point, from an investment, we will take your billions of dollars,
Yeah.
Apple. And you know what? It doesn't matter how many views we get anymore because you've
on
set, you know,
Apple.
you're giving us the money. It's on
Yeah.
Apple. So it's like it kind of works out for everybody, but F1 it feels like. But you know, ESPN, ESPN was basically repurposing the broadcast from Sky. So that, you know, from the UK broadcast, I think the American audience itself deserves its own broadcast with American presenters, or at least like a split, you know, group of presenters, someone that's like speaking a little bit more to the way the American audience wants to hear, just like different opinions, right? Like Americans don't want to be told what to do, especially not from the Brits. So
Yeah.
we've seen that play out, you know, 250 years ago.
I don't know. That's one of those things because so I'm a World Cup like fan, soccer fan. Like
Yeah.
I think I've always had a problem with American presenters because it seems like they only
Same.
come around every 4 years. They don't know the sport. They don't know the players.
Completely agree.
I've heard like presenters mispronounce names of like the players, and I'm like, this is so wrong. Bring in those British like commentators because I want them to talk about the sport and not talk to
I'm
me
with
as
you.
if I'm an idiot. You know?
I'm with you.
So that's a similar like thing that I would get with like F1. So if there's like a way to kind of counterbalance, like teaching new people, actually, I thought that because I listen to the international feed, not the American feed, for that reason, where it's just like I feel like they do try to be a little inclusive of like, hey, like if you've never watched this before, this is what this means, or if like you know this is what it means when they're like racing around. So I think they're kind of you know trying to do that a little bit more. But I agree that it's we'll have to kind of switch it up, right? Because another thing that I hear all the time is whenever Danica Patrick comes on to like do her commentary as like the American voice, right? People are like, why are you bringing in? She's not even an F1 driver. She was a NASCAR driver. And whenever they bring her on, they're saying like it's not the same. So she kind of takes on like as a driver, this is like the perspective. But she never really gets rave reviews for her commentary.
To me, that's though a symptom or a result of the fact that it's like, here's the one woman who competed with the men, and I say one woman. I know there's others. Here's the one that had like the biggest profile. There are other people you can bring on here. I've met Danica. Like she's. I'll say this too. We go back to attention and the AI and all that other stuff, and this kind of comes full circle because I think it happens with sports and with news and with all these types of like people that have to make content. Everyone has to have some crazy opinion or they have to say something crazy because that's how you get clicks and views and attention. And Danica gives them like, oh, look, we have a woman who drove a car, like who drove with men. So we're going to put her on. And she's probably sitting there going, I have to say things to keep myself relevant. I mean, I'm not saying all of her, that's why she's saying what she's saying half the time, but like, it just, you don't know anymore. You always question. Ryan Holiday's book, Trust Me, I'm Lying, has caused me to just question everything. I don't believe anything anymore, right? I tend to think that everybody is doing something for a reason, right? There's like, well, I don't know. I don't know why you're saying this. Or so, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a catch-22 for whoever does get the series because you want to give the people that watch it and that understand the sport, you want to give them the respect they deserve, but you also want to be inclusive, like you said, of new folks that are coming on, and you don't want to have some like pretentious, never explain anything broadcast.
Right.
But
definitely agree.
I think the lesson is if you're like from a brand perspective, building for culture more so than just like numbers, like attention will come. And that's what's happening. They've built something that culturally became relevant. There's so many aspects of the series that are interesting to people, even people that thought they'd never be interested in motorsport. And it's kind of taken on this life of its own, right? And I think any brand, any marketer can take some lessons from that, whether you're dealing with an $18 billion, conglomerate or not, or a, small mom and pop shop, like just understanding what your audience actually wants and how you build culture, how you get, how you access that culture is very important. And the movie is testament to that. Seeing something on a big screen gives it a little bit of like realism, like, oh wow, it's a movie, like it must be real, or it must be good because it was a movie. And so like smart, just such a smart play when everyone thought like F1's having a movie back in 21, 22, they're like, and now it's here and it's like, oh, I totally get what it's doing and why it's doing what it's doing. So you can't be afraid sometimes to go against what the experts say and do something because you know that like you're on a bigger trajectory. And kudos to Liberty Media for knowing what their path was, understanding their journey and saying, we know our rights are coming up in 25. We're going to renew for a lesser number now with the incumbent. We're going to build up this big cultural play. And then when 2025 comes around, we're going to get what we need because no one's going to stop talking about this thing. And that's exactly what happened. It was a great marketing blitz. They, became this like, I don't know, F1 for like 3 weeks. It's all people were talking about everywhere. I mean, people, like you'd walk down the street and people would talk about this movie because it just became so synonymous with speed and, oh, it's like Top Gun and this, like it just became the thing. So if you're a brand that can tap into culture somehow, which I think every brand can, then this is definitely the playbook for you.
Definitely. I think my takeaway is more on Apple's side, in terms of how we're seeing them also start to slowly pick out how they're gonna grow Apple TV as a brand. We've chided them before for not promoting their stuff enough, but it really seems as if their larger playbook is to start bringing in more disparate audiences, right? I mean, the MLS thing, we quibble with how well it's doing, but I think it allowed them to kind of build up how they would start promoting sports in general and building that up. And now that they're bringing, F1, it's also making me see as like the bigger play to eventually get into, football or baseball. And by that time, people will be so used to the way that Apple has created that content that that's exactly what they'll be looking for. And it'll no longer be good enough to just, have a live feed of the show. Now it's like people are going to want to interact with the content beyond what's happening on a whenever a game is happening.
The only take really would just be that Liberty Media crushed it.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think that like Liberty Media, which has been around for forever, and I think probably still the average person doesn't know what Liberty Media is, but they've been, I think they've probably been one of the few, if not only, like legacy media companies that has really found a way to continue success throughout digital, like through the digital transformation. So
yeah,
kudos to Liberty.
and we didn't talk about this, but the Liberty's new CEO is formerly NBA China's head. I think it's very smart, great move. Understanding because they know that they want to attack China next. Like they want to go after that market. And Derek Chang, he actually made things happen for the NBA in China. Like it's huge there from a licensing and valuation standpoint. So anyway, like they're just making such great moves. It's crazy to see.
Yeah. Awesome. So let's talk about this idea that I've started thinking about a little bit more as we're seeing just movie promotional content get created these days, right? Where I'm kind of seeing a through line between the folks that are like, where's journalistic integrity and like what people, those interviews. And we even have some actors who have come out to say that, oh, the TikTokification part of their job is not the part that they like. And while they understand that they have to do it as part of like the movie marketing promotional, engine, it's not a part that they enjoy. And Christina and I were talking about this last week where it's far more enjoyable as an audience member to have the actors that are taking it, on the chin and like wanting to participate. And I wanted to call out again, David Cornsweet and Rachel Brosnahan and the Superman team, for the way that they're kind of going out and doing these promotional tours. I just saw the interview he did with Brittany Brodsky, the Royal Court, as they call it, where we found out, and I learned more about, David Cornsweet as like, as a person, where he's talking about his, the order that he watches, like the Star Wars movie, which kind of went viral because of like the order that he put it in. He put it as like,
put it in.
He he started with A New Hope, The Empire Strikes Back, then goes to the new trilogy, The Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, and then ends it with Return of the Jedi. So I saw somebody say
That's
like,
a weird
oh wow,
choice.
so what you're saying is like once you bring in Vader, then you go back to his backstory and then you like end it with like the happy ending, which I thought like that's kind of an interesting way of, doing it. But it's also actually teeing him up to eventually join the Star Wars universe, because he's kind of being like, I'm a huge fan. I would love to be a Jedi. No, not yet.
Oh, okay.
No. But so what I'm saying is like, this is kind of another way to kind of promote himself and to be like fan casted into the Star Wars universe at some point, because he's going out there like, hey, I'm such a huge fan. Like he talked about why Anakin became Vader instead of, just a Jedi was because, Qui-Gon Jinn died, who was like meant to be his like mentor instead of Obi-Wan Kenobi. So he's basically showing how much of a geek and like a nerd he is, and that he's like an actual fan of all these like properties. So I think it's like allowing actors to kind of come out as like more authentic like human beings, which, as we were talking about earlier in the AI section, is going to counterbalance like the AI slop that kind of gets created, right? Because we're going to want to find out that these are like real human beings that like are not just like us, right? I mean, celebrities are not going to be just like us, but that have takes on the things that we have takes on, and that are, want to talk about it, and that can be seen as like more genuine and human. Another thing here is just kind of the democratization of celebrity access, right? It used to be that it was only like the major publications that would talk to them. But now because, influencers and creators are growing and are becoming part of like that movie promotional content machine, we're seeing aspects to these like movie stars that we probably never would have seen. And I think we're also seeing how major publications are taking some of those learnings to create their own versions of these like, TikTok videos, a little bit more produced and all that, right? Some of the famous ones that I always kind of keep an eye out for, the actors on actors interviews on Variety, the 73 questions on Vogue, and then you have Vanity Fair's lie detector segment, which has become kind of popular for a lot of these movie stars to do. And I think, one of those is that we have to give, Jimmy Fallon his flowers for kind of creating that with like the lip sync battle and doing thank you notes on, just regular TV. And I know that, some people have just said, oh, he's kind of like ruined what like interviews are like of like artists.
He's a horrible interviewer, but he's a great entertainer.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of also opened up the door for how we're trying to talk to celebrities and how they get involved with like movie promotional content. And then just some of the return on investment and the industry impact that we're seeing is that we're starting to see a lot more of those viral videos come from TikTok than from like regular, content pieces on, Esquire or, GQ, because David Cornsweet just did those. What went viral for me were the photos of him looking hot basically, but not any of the substance of what he spoke about on the, in the interview. influencer marketing is also kind of being, playfully ragged on, right? Because we just saw Eben Moss Backrack came out for the Fantastic Four tour, and there's a video of him coming out to like the press junket and being like, "Hey, influencers," and everyone's like, "Oh, that he's calling them out." That it's, influencers have now kind of taken over like the press rooms as opposed to like standard journalists who like used to be, in those rooms as well. So I think we're seeing that change. I like it because we're seeing more of like the human element to like these movie stars, which most of the time you probably wouldn't have gotten, and it's giving the ones that are really good at it an opportunity to like show more of their personality and the characters, and then like I said with Corn Sweat, able to kind of like pitch himself as like a future movie role that he might want to be able to do, which I don't know that they would have been able to do prior to that.
I think what's kind of interesting is that we're seeing the people or entities who are the best at grabbing attention kind of rise at the top in this sense, and are the ones who are able to command the attention of these types of top tier celebrities. I think also even more broadly, we're seeing this like a lot more diversity in the types of media that are influential, or the types of entities that are influential. Because even if you look back, like, you look back 10 years ago to today, right? Something like Hot Ones, for instance. 10 years ago, I think big fans of Hot Ones were watching it 10 years ago, but it's not what it is today. Because I feel like now it's kind of seen as elite to get on that show, right? And to get those, why am I blanking on the host's name? But like
Sean Evans.
Yeah, Sean Evans, right? To get like his really detailed, thorough, deep cut questions. Now it's like seen as elite, whereas 10 years ago it was just kind of this like weird, niche, funny chicken wing show.
Agreed. One thing there too is he was recently, I don't know if it was this year or last year, where he was up for the first time for our Emmy consideration, and people were like,
"Oh, that's
yes,
right.
he should be, right? Because he's got some of the best interviews and interview questions in the game, like even better than some of the traditional media outlets that are out there. So I do like that we are starting to see at least the ones that do practice some of that, more in-depth journalism to rise to the top and be able to, get awards for their shows, which previously, wouldn't have been allowed. So I definitely think there needs to be room for that type of, marketing to come out, because it is doing more to kind of like change the game. And I mean, I don't like the whole idea of, although that's not the way that it used to be, so like it shouldn't change. That's just not something that I think. That it's just like things are going to change, and especially with younger viewers, you're kind of going to have to meet them where they're at. I mean, we've talked about that here before, where you have to put create the types of marketing strategies that are going to work for your particular audience or demographic, and if that's where your audience is, then that's kind of what you have to do. And especially if you want to be more inclusive of like the types of audiences that you're bringing in, right? Obviously, if we're like, the big blockbusters here, with Superman, I don't think Brad Pitt did, some of these like TikTok videos, right? But I think he's, a star enough that he doesn't have to do it as much.
But they did a lot to that point. Like there was a lot. And it's interesting that we're talking about this from the Superman perspective, but the Formula One thing was filled with, it was all, it felt like everybody was an influencer that was invited to the premieres and involved with, pre-press, like media stuff. It was like, it felt like it was all influencers, and the drivers, I think F1 playing it the way they wanted to, they moved, it was GQ interviews, and it was, it was the elevated feel and vibe that they wanted to go for. And it worked. They were everywhere. Like I said, GQ covers, that's the first thing that comes to my head. I'm trying to think about the other stuff. There was a lot of other stuff, but GQ covers to McDonald's Happy Meals and like, KFC meal buckets and like all this stuff that was like, wow, you can't escape it. It almost felt like Barbie. But the influencers play a huge role in it, and you get like this where you need influencers almost. You know, are they good at influencing or are they just good at getting attention? I mean, some brands don't necessarily need people to be like them to be influenced. They just need you to get attention for them.
Right.
And I think F1 falls into that where it's like, yeah, we don't need you influencer to influence anybody. We just want a bunch of eyeballs on our stuff and we'll handle the rest from there, which I feel like F1 has done a good job of, and which is why people are always like, well, why are there influencers on the grid or why are there influencers here? Well, because
they
just get a bunch of eyeballs and that's all we care
Yeah,
about.
they're
We'll do the cool
amplification
stuff for you.
platforms.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're amplification platforms for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to think about it because I think there's also the fact that one of the ones I was just thinking about as I was saying that, I was thinking in my head, did Tom Cruise do any of this like TikTok stuff? And one that I remember was that one guy who like runs like really fast to things. He did one where he like he was running to the desert, blah, 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 and like through, the city and stuff. And then he ends running into like the movie theater. And like shakes hands with Tom Cruise, and Tom Cruise is like, wow, that's some good running, you have good form. And I was like, okay, so they kind of, try to fit it to like fit the movie and then also fit like Tom Cruise. So I definitely think like not every influencer is gonna like be suitable for each movie, but the ones that fit kind of like the brand make sense in order to use them to amplify what you're doing. Like we talked about last week about Ashton Hall and Glenn Powell doing the Running Man morning routine. And that one like made sense, right? With like what they're trying to do to promote the movie.
There's also the question that I've seen a lot of is like, there's a lot of traditional journalists that get upset with how new age journalists or influencers report on things, and there's no journalistic integrity. And I'm not knocking anybody that does it like at all, but there's just such a fine line. We're at this crossroads or an inflection point because you have old school, this traditional, thinking where this is how you got your story and this is how your sources. And it's like, now I do not want to say it's all gone by the wayside, but the way people are making money and the way publications are paying for things or news outlets are leveraging, you're like, I don't care. I'm just going to do whatever I do to get the clicks and the views. And so when again, attention, it's all about attention. This entire episode should just be about attention, right? Like that's literally what we've talked about. Everything has to do with attention. It's a conversation that comes up a lot with influencers specifically.
Yeah. And I think, you know what, the rise of Joe Rogan is the perfect example of this inflection point, right? Where I think like clearly he's built up a lot of influence. And this time I really do mean influence, right? He is an influential person with his podcast, but like, and people are like, hey, you need to ask tougher questions. You need to think more critically and all these things. But like he has kind of built his podcast on, no, I'm kind of a dumb guy. And I ask other people questions because they're the experts. Right. And like that was kind of the premise of the podcast when he first started it. But now it's grown to this influential point that people are like, no, you bear a much, much bigger responsibility than this. And that's the perfect question of ethics and influence and journalism here.
But then on the flip side, it also goes viral when influencers do like bad or like, don't fit like the moment, right? Like one of the moments that comes up is when the Grammy Awards, Babyface was ignored over Chaperone. So
that's right.
Like,
I remember this moment now. She was talking. She asked Babyface a question, and he was in the process of answering it, and then she goes Chaperone, and was like yelling over him, and he was and
right, so there.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I wouldn't have known who Chapel was, so
yeah.
right.
I know the name, but I wouldn't have known Babyface. Again,
I would have known, yeah. And then I think in this moment, like Babyface he's a seasoned artist. He's been around.
I mean,
for
dude's
forever.
70 years old, so like,
yeah, professional guy, but like also was like, okay, you're gonna do that. I'm gonna step aside.
Yeah,
and he was very classy about it, but also direct. But people were like, put some respect on Babyface, and they're not wrong.
To be fair, it also wasn't an influencer. It was actually the AP journalist. So
it was the AP journalist.
Wow.
There you go. So it's not just influencers that are messing up. Journalists also have to start doing their homework, because you can't be blaming influencers for things that, you're not supposed to be doing, quote unquote.
I'm gonna. This will be the last thing I say on this topic, but are we just miscategorizing or misclassifying influencers. Like anybody with an online presence gets the label, oh, you're an influencer. If you post content online, you're an influencer. That's what you do. We were in Italy. We were with my cousins, and they introduced us to some of their friends in town, and we were hanging out, and I was explaining to them like what I do. And at the time I was posting, I mean, I still post a lot. So they're like, oh, so you're an influencer. I was like, no, I have like a real business. And, this and, that. And they just couldn't see past you're an influencer. Like that's what you do, because they're like, well, we just post pictures of like our kids or our friends, or like when we go on vacation, like that's like, we're not, but if you post anything that's not just like personal, for your friends, you're an influencer. And so like maybe that's just the problem, because like it's actually really funny you just said that, because the AP's journalist, now, I have no idea who it was, I don't know the situation, I'm just gonna like make a total assumption here, but also this could happen. Well, that person, like, is she a traditional journalist, or was she more of like a hybrid, like somebody who is coming up? Like that's gonna happen more.
Yeah.
Right.
Agreed.
Like,
yeah. But I think there definitely has to be like a separation between what we think of as journalists who, are meant to have, I don't know, like there should be more something else there. I don't know what it is, right? Like this is another thing that you're right. The lines are getting blurred, right? And as we see more influencers in those like press rooms, and I don't know that necessarily putting the, the brand of like the publication behind their name is like the thing, because I don't think that that's the same across the board either, right? Obviously, I mean, we've seen from just tech journals and publications that some companies like some journalists over others because of, their takes or how they're more welcoming or not. And I'm sure that that's true across Hollywood as well, right? I guess lessons to be learned from this for me are authenticity. Authenticity is going to be like the main thing here. I know we say that a lot, but it's just the idea that is like, how are you putting yourself out there in a way that puts you in front of new audiences? And I think that movie studios are starting to realize that if you can kind of pair the cast with influencers that are kind of in their space and have audiences that, overlap, that it makes sense to do that. I do wonder if, for more of like those indie movies or, smaller films that are trying to get bigger audiences, if they also, start doing this type of influencer marketing, or if it's just going to remain with like the big studios, because honestly the big studios are always going to get large audiences anyway, because they're big tentpole movies like Superman. But what about some of those smaller films that don't get that attention another way? And I do wonder if that's just because they don't have the marketing budget to do it, or if the influencers themselves are only interested in doing the big movies with like the bigger studios. Though I mean, obviously some of those actors are acting in both, right? So I do wonder if, eventually some of like the actors, entourage will help them also try to promote their smaller films that a lot of them seem to want to do in, in conjunction with like the larger, tentpole films.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, authenticity was such a buzzword. And it felt like, oh my God, it was cringy, but now it's coming back. Like we're in a new cycle of where authenticity matters. And I mean, again, this whole episode comes full circle. And I think you're right. The authenticity is going to play the differentiator at this point. And I would also say leverage the talent you have. And these are actors, these are actresses, these are some of the more recognizable people that are walking amongst us. Like, yeah, you should be using them. You should be leveraging who they are and their faces. And if you can find a way to blend, what you have with who your audience reveres as influential, for lack of a better word, then why not do it? And I think that works across brands, that works across movies, Hollywood, whatever it is. Like, if you think like that, you can win. And the good ones are already doing it.
Yeah. For me, a big takeaway overall in this episode has been the distinction between attention or ability to garner attention and influence, the ability to influence. Because, with the case of the AI slop, right, like the Mia Zelu, right, it's got a lot of attention, but for what? Was it influential? Is that kind of content influential? We don't know. I don't think it is, but open question. The case of like F1, Liberty Media, Apple, right? Like this is like the perfect trio of attention and influence, right? And the way that F1 has grown and been marketed, right? Like they're tapping into all these kinds of amplification channels, but they themselves are like, they are the product, right? They're the influence. And then the same with movie marketing, right? It's, you have the big studios or even just like the actors, right? The talent, that's the influence, who are also tapping into creators slash influencers for the attention, for the amplification. So, yeah, I guess like the overall takeaway from that for me is, as marketers, you think about the ways that you can tap into attention, the ways you can create attention, and the ways you can actually drive people to change or influence people to take action on what you want to do. And maybe the last thought is the two, right? Attention and influence are not necessarily the same thing, right? They're mutually exclusive. They feed into each other. And so you have to think about both.
Yeah. Another takeaway from me that I'm realizing as you're talking about that is it really seems as if we're headed to like just this bifurcation of real and like unplanned moments, right? I think as a counteraction to like the AI slop, how we show the human element to, you know, making mistakes or, you know, saying things off the cuff or having that interview, you know, about like the Star Wars, that is just different from like what you see from other, you know, stars that are out there. Like the fact that the order that he watches the films, like is different and is unique, allowed him to kind of showcase how different he is. And then also seeing how we're also getting a lot more scripted content, like what Apple is trying to do with like F1, right? They're trying to show their technology in like a new way, bringing in like the F1 movie and bringing in, you know, F1 itself. Like I would just be curious to kind of see like what happens as like, you know, companies you know, companies across the board figure out what they can do to have more unplanned moments that, you know, go viral or like get you attention, but then also figuring out how you can showcase your product or service in a way that is unique to like what you bring to the table.
And with that, Vincenzo, tell us like, how can we support you?
Yeah.
How can our listeners support you?
Oh, I mean, if you're interested in Formula One, or at least the business behind Formula One, subscribe to my newsletter, bizofspeed.com. It's super easy. And I mean, I'm on Twitter. I'm on all the things. I'm pretty responsive at Vincenzo Landino.
Yeah. You got to follow Vincenzo, the F1 guy.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, Amanda, we're actually following each other now.
We
Amanda.
actually
Yeah,
are
there you
now.
go.
Oh my gosh, embarrassing. I'm sorry. But
Well,
also,
but-
by the way, your name is like, sounds like an F1 driver.
Yeah, right.
So, I feel like you
Awesome.
could be.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Maybe if I was like 25 years younger.
It's
I'm
never
a little too
late.
old for that, I think, right now. Although, if you did watch the F1 movie, I guess I'm not too old for it because Brad Pitt can drive an F1 car. So I guess I'll
There you go. Cool. Well, you can follow me at Sonia Baschez on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, all that. And then make sure to follow the pod at on YouTube at Meme Team Pod, and then on Spotify at Meme Team Podcast.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Thank you, dude. So much fun.
Yeah,
See
that
you
was
guys next
great.
week.